Hey, it worked. Okay, we are live. Hello, welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Papiden, and this is Fermenting Opinions, the podcast and Google Hangout in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is December 17th, 2019, and we are here upon the eve of what is likely going to be a full House vote for impeachment tomorrow. A lot of people are excited. A lot of people are rallying. I've seen videos and things of demonstrations going on all over my state in Tennessee and all over the country. Everybody's in an uproar. Impeachment's going to happen. But should we, as in should the House, why? What do we think the outcome is? What are the expectations? We're here to talk about it. It is going to be a jaw flapping good time. So I am here joined by Chris, RJ, and William. Others may join, they may not. I don't know. But we're going to talk about, I think, first and most important, because we've done other hangouts and we've touched on impeachment. Why don't we get to sort of like the brass tacks first? Not spend too much time on it. What the articles of impeachment are that have been approved by the House Judiciary Committee, if I have that correctly, and whether or not that they are to the point enough, or whether or not they're meritorious, essentially. My understanding is one is abuse of power, and the other is obstruction of justice. Does anybody have any sort of opening thoughts on those? Because personally, to me, they sound a little on the vague side, but anybody?
Sure, yeah. So the Constitution allows impeachment of a public officer for treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors. Mm-hmm. And high crimes and misdemeanors doesn't mean an actual crime. It means really anything that is unfitting for public office. So these fit under the high crimes and misdemeanors clause of the Constitution. Abuse of power has been brought before, so has obstruction. The abuse of power count is essentially the direct claim that Trump abused the power of the office of the presidency by requesting that Ukraine investigate a political rival of his, contrary to U.S. Interest, but directly in his interest. The other count, which is obstruction, is the fact that the White House blocked every subpoena and every request for documents that the House of Representatives, which is by the Constitution in charge of impeachment, asked for. And some of those requests are still rolling through the courts, which is an interesting there's an interesting play there. Okay. In that.
Sorry, go ahead.
The whether or not he being Trump has the ability to say, no, I will not give you these documents, no, I will not give you these witnesses, is actually being adjudicated right now. However, in terms of the Congress's right to oversight of the executive, particularly within the general scope of impeachment, every time the Supreme Court has ever ruled on one of those cases, they've come down to say unanimously that the Congress does have that right.
Gotcha. Okay. So to clarify, at least to my mind, that the obstruction of justice charge is something that if Nixon hadn't stepped down, that he was also going to be slapped with, essentially, as part of his impeachment, right? The part of the Senate trial, because he did sort of the same thing in refusing to release documents, refusing to allow people to testify by, I guess, claiming executive privilege over that situation.
And essentially, he gave up in response to the Supreme Court, he gave up the tapes, which included the 18-minute gap, which is lionized in American history. Mm-hmm. And that itself was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. That's when Republican senators went to the White House and said, "You are going to be removed if you are impeached."
Gotcha.
And instead of being impeached by the House of Representatives, he stepped down before those articles came before the floor.
Right. It's also worth pointing out that historically, no president has ever been removed from office. There's only been 3 impeachments. This is the 3rd one. No president has ever been removed via this process. We had Clinton, who was impeached, and then I guess effectively acquitted by the Senate. Also, the likely outcome here, and then the 3rd case would be Nixon, who stepped down before he was impeached.
And then Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson is the other one, which was a purely political ploy. That is remembered very poorly.
Right.
Impeachment was not used until after the Civil War in 1868, and then was not even brought up again until Nixon's 2nd term. So it's something that historically is not used very often, and it's accelerated in the last 40 years.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like it's becoming relatively du jour to try to, because I remember pretty much my entire, even from adolescent age on, that someone's always screamed impeach at whoever the guy is in office over something that they did, and it seems like it gets overused. I'm of the opinion this time that it is entirely appropriate, because as I see it, and I think what this comes down to, without all of the other extrapolations, when the synopsis of the transcript of that call came out and was at September, and he said, "I want you to do me a favor. I want you to investigate the CrowdStrike thing and the thing about the investigator with the Bidens." He was asking for dirt on a political rival. Like right there, baseline, it is a violation of campaign finance law. Like in trying to involve a foreign government in U.S. election, like open and shut. That is to my mind a crime. Again, not a legal expert. But I do spend a lot of time around lawyers, and I was sired by them, so I think that counts for something. And everything else is just more that goes on top. And it seems like the response is to never address that point specifically, but to get at whether or not the Bidens did something corrupt, whether or not, well, what about the Steele dossier? What about this? What aboutism, essentially? But it doesn't actually negate the fact that he invited the Ukrainian government to involve itself in the 2020 election. I don't think there's any escaping that. Whoever or whatever may be guilty of other things, like here we are, and the fact that he's refused to allow people to testify, and that really I think what the State Department, I can't remember who else, has released like 0 documents in relation to this. I think is entirely damning, and is apparently also being regarded as obstruction of justice. So that's where I'm at with it. Chris, got thoughts, sir?
I mean, yeah. Every time it's kind of like a trigger word to me. Every time I hear like political opponent dirt, dig up. It's. If Biden is squeaky clean and there's nothing to be found, and Trump is trying to drag him through the mud and use a foreign government, then yeah, that's one thing. But there's very good evidence, in my opinion, that Biden has got some real dirt on his hands here, and it just so happens he's running as a political rival.
Gotcha. So I guess. Let's walk through that sort of legally to my understanding. Let's say Biden is, and I don't think he is, but let's say Biden is 100% guilty of doing some corrupt something with regards to Ukraine to help his son out. Does that mean it's okay for the president to specifically request an investigation into a political rival from a foreign government? Like, because it's still a campaign finance law with regards to foreign interference.
Potentially. I mean, potentially it's a violation of campaign finance law.
Okay.
The problem here is not just the request, although it's an odd request in that we have lots of federal law enforcement bodies that could be legitimately investigating this idea.
Sure.
Asking a foreign government to do so doesn't seem to be in the interest of America's law and order.
Mm-hmm.
However, putting that aside, the fact that there is this pretty apparent withholding of legitimizing the new Ukrainian regime, Zelensky,
Mm-hmm.
who was elected in April, I believe, and so withholding a meeting with them, which legitimizes the regime in the eyes of the world. It's the same reason why a lot of our diplomacy is it almost looks like a play. Like we use certain words, but we don't use certain other words. Having a meeting with the president of another nation legitimizes that regime in the eyes of the world, as well as the $391 million that was already congressionally appropriated that was being withheld without explanation by the administration, suggests that it's not just that even if there is a legitimate claim to some corruption on the part of Joe Biden,
Mm-hmm.
that withholding that aid and meeting from the Ukraine in exchange for, in exchange for an investigation, or rather an announcement of an investigation, is not proper. It's simply not within the norms of the American political setting. So this is where I come down on it. I don't think that it's possible not to impeach a president for doing this.
Gotcha.
My thought is, as much as I don't like Trump, and it's a lot, I'm not sure that I would necessarily remove him from office based on these charges. I think that he's done things that are removable, but I don't know that these things are. We talked about Clinton already.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton committed perjury.
Absolutely.
There's no question. His law license was suspended. He was acquitted by the Senate in that he was not found guilty of being removable, but he was censured by the Senate. And I just wonder if maybe that's more the appropriate way to move forward here. Now, I don't think that's going to happen either, because I think that we're in a very highly charged political setting now,
Mm-hmm.
where tapping out on censure is not going to work for Democrats or Republicans. But I don't know that I would remove Trump simply for improperly asking Ukraine to interfere with the 2020 election in what's essentially a low-level way. He wanted them to announce that there might be an investigation. There's no evidence that any investigation was ever going to be done, nor that one was ever going to be fruitful. Ukraine has already investigated this and found nothing. Burisma has been heavily investigated. I believe there are 15 different charges brought against Burisma.
Mm-hmm.
The UK froze a number of accounts for Burisma and Burisma executives. All of those were dropped. So, I don't know that, as much as I don't like Trump, that I would remove him on these charges that are being brought probably tomorrow.
Gotcha. That is a very interesting perspective.
I'm very fascinated by that. I enjoyed hearing that, though.
So I guess my thought, well, it's just like you said with Clinton. Clinton absolutely abused the power of his office. He absolutely committed perjury. And the Senate said, yeah, illegal, but is this bad? And do we want to chalk that up to pure partisanship, or is that a more balanced view of what the infractions were? The guy lied about getting oral sex from Monica Lewinsky and tried to cover it up.
All of the Republicans in the Senate did vote to remove.
Sure.
the Democrats were in control of the Senate at the time, much like the Republicans are in control of the Senate today.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did not return a vote of remove, which is a very high bar. It's 2/3. I mean,
Yeah, 67, right? So
yeah, getting 2/3 of the Senate to vote for something that is inherently partisan, something that is inherently political, is going to be very difficult. But I mean, the Senate wasn't likely to remove Clinton because the charges that were brought against him weren't really facially removable. And I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole of what Ken Starr was supposed to be investigating and what he actually did investigate and how far afield from real estate deals a tawdry affair is. But at the end of the day, I don't think that charge was removable. I do think that it deserves censure. I do think that Bill Clinton deserved to lose his law license. Donald Trump does not have a law license, which he proves every day on Twitter. But given that, I think that these charges in this setting are probably not, without more, are probably not removable. And I do think that he should be impeached. I do think that it's important to hold the executive to a certain standard, even in the age of Trump. But I don't think that it makes sense to remove an elected American president for the charge of requesting an investigation or the announcement of an investigation into a political rival by a foreign government alone.
Gotcha. Do you believe, before anyone else jumps in, but you do, just for clarity, you do believe what he did constitutes a violation of campaign finance law, right?
I think it probably does. Campaign finance laws are real touch and go in terms of what the definition of the term value means.
Yeah.
So surely oppositional investigations are worth something. If they are worth enough to meet the threshold of, I believe it's $10,000 in the campaign finance laws, well, definitely on the presidential level, they're worth $10,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you blow through $10,000 in a couple minutes, but there are some conflicting rulings by courts on what the value of intangibles are. As to whether or not it's a violation of law, I don't think that matters because, again, the threshold for impeachment is not the violation of a law. High crimes and misdemeanors does not mean a crime or a misdemeanor in the setting in which it was written. I know,
which is hilarious. Confusing. I know. Yeah, I know. I agree with you.
It's very confusing.
It's whatever Congress says it is, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's essentially anything that doesn't befit the office. And if you talk to James Madison today, I can guarantee you, even though it's very dangerous to ever say, I know what a founding father would say. If you talk to James Madison today, he would say that the most important thing undergirding the American experiment is people willing to serve the public being in elected positions and in the government. And I think that's where you get to the definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. If you are violating that public trust, then you are not fit for the office. Now, should you be removed necessarily? No. And that's where I kind of come down on this particular Trump question. But I think that the House of Representatives made a decision that it was going to move forward with actual impeachment, bringing articles, rather than just keeping the inquiry open forever, rather than fighting all the battles in the courts, rather than trying to force John Bolton to testify, particularly John Bolton, also Mick Mulvaney and several other people in the administration, rather than trying to get the documents that they were looking for. And if that's the bed that they're going to make, even from where I sit, I don't know that that Trump is removable.
Gotcha. And that where you're at, I want to put a pin right in that and come back to that. We haven't heard from William yet, and I kind of wanted to get what his maybe hot take was on all of this, whether or not he thinks Trump is impeachable, whether he thinks he ought to be removed, like just regarding the articles. obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Like, where are you on those things?
Right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I definitely appreciate RJ's comments, and I pretty much agree with everything he said. As far as, should the Congress vote to impeach? I mean, it seems to me like high crimes and misdemeanors is kind of an ambiguous standard. So one person might have a definition of high crimes and misdemeanors that is pretty different from another person's definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. So for me personally, if I were a member of Congress, I don't think I would vote to impeach, because my particular standard of high crimes and misdemeanors would be, I would see removing an elected president from office as a pretty big deal. So unless he was like caught collaborating with terrorists or, cheating the treasury or enriching, cronies at taxpayer expense, or putting troops, in harm's way for political convenience, something like gross negligence that caused people to die. That's pretty much what I would have to see for me to vote to remove someone. But that's my personal take. Someone else, I can totally understand why the Democrats, they might see Biden as their main guy, and they want to protect him, and they might see Trump as playing dirty pool, and I can understand why they would be outraged, if Trump is colluding with some foreign government to throw garbage at Biden. Now, the one thing I do agree that I think Trump did that might be a little slimy was the withholding of the congressionally approved aid to Ukraine, is kind of a holding it hostage until they did what he wanted, and that was kind of shady, actually. Does it reach high crimes and misdemeanors? That's kind of a judgment call. So if the Democrats want to do it, they should feel free to do it. I mean, I won't be mad if they vote to impeach him. I do think it's kind of a politically risky move. I think it's going to kind of rally the troops on the other side. A lot of Trump people will sort of, circle the bandwagon, or they'll be sort of galvanized, and it could backfire on the Democrats from a political perspective. So I don't know if it's a smart move politically, but certainly a legal process, and they're well within their rights to do so. Seems like I had a few other thoughts, but I'm trying to remember what they were.
I just want to jump in real fast.
Yeah.
Now that you're talking about politics.
Yeah.
I think that it's been made pretty clear. We've had about 2 months of this from Nancy Pelosi's official, we are in an impeachment inquiry announcement. And the polls haven't really moved. So it's not a disaster for the Democrats. It's still at least a plurality of Americans agree with impeachment and removal. But it certainly has not become something where, where we saw a movement like in Nixon, where the country was not really polarized until the very end of what would have been the impeachment inquiry. Never got to end because he resigned. But even on the last poll that was taken before Nixon resigned, he still had only 50% of the country, and this was after everything had come out in public. Only 58% of the public was in favor of removing. So we're not there yet with Trump, and I don't think we're going to get there. I think that we're looking at something where Democrats may have wanted this to move the needle more. They may have wanted to say, like, look, we had all of these law professors testify. We had all of these ambassadors and people who are working on the ground in Ukraine testify. Simply didn't capture the American imagination. So I guess I kind of agree with you to the extent that politically this might not have been the best move by the Democrats. However, it looks like enough of the nation's political thought on this was baked in already that it's not going to hurt them either. We haven't seen much movement, plus or minus, in the vast majority of polls that have come out on the subject.
Now there was one article that I read recently. It was on Daily Wire. They were talking about polls that were in the battleground states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and basically, according to I guess it was the Firehouse Strategies battleground poll, Trump was leading all of the Democrat candidates, in those states, which is actually pretty huge when you think about it, because we're talking about traditionally blue states that almost always vote for the Democrat.
Right, and actually, that's a good point, William. Those were the part of the Democrat firewall in 2016. Had those 3 states, which, as you correctly noted, traditionally have been blue on national elections, voted for Hillary. She would have won in the Electoral College as well as the popular vote, which she won anyway. But about 75,000 votes over 3 states can change an entire election, and that's a fraction of a percent of the national election. So the one thing that I would say there, that was published by the Daily Wire. It got picked up by pretty much everyone, as far as I could tell. Firehouse Strategies is essentially the same thing as an in-house Republican polling outfit. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I'm not saying that they're a bad polling outfit. I'm just saying that they are founded by Republicans. They work for Republicans. They probably have a pretty significant R plus, as we would call it. They're going to be leaning Republican.
Right.
It's also, it's a little early for the state by states to matter much. Those tend to matter a lot more once you have a nominee opposing the incumbent. But the polls are definitely out there. I just don't think that it's moved the needle much one way or the other for or against the Democrats. And therefore, it kind of comes out as a wash. And if you're doing something, if you're taking an action in the land of politics and it doesn't do anything, it probably wasn't the best idea. So I'm sort of there with you.
Now, kind of the way I look at this, though, is like, it really, if they were going to go down this road, they should have waited till they had something juicier, because Trump, like making some backroom deal with the Ukrainian leader guy, most people, the average person on the street, doesn't really care about such things. It's not like, Trump was caught, sending a squad of FBI agents to break into the Democrat headquarters, or, Trump, did this military maneuver and got some soldiers killed to pull off some political stunt, or Trump was caught making some kind of a deal with Hamas, or something like that. It's just not juicy. So it kind of seems like, and I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for Trump in the last election. I'm not a Democrat either. So I'm kind of neutral in sort of their battles that they have with each other. But from my perspective, as someone who doesn't really like either the Democrats or Trump, I kind of see this as it kind of comes across to me as a bit of a witch hunt. Like the Democrats just have it in for Trump and they just want to undermine him at any opportunity. So it kind of, in my, not that I have, again, a positive view of Trump, but it makes Trump slightly more sympathetic to me versus the Democrats. But I can completely understand how, if the Democrats would want to protect their presidential nominees, if they think Trump's playing dirty pool and trying to kill their campaigns before it even gets off the ground. So, if that's the way they honestly feel is what's going on, then I can understand why they want to do this. I definitely think they are within their legal rights to do this. I mean, I think that law is there for a reason, that there needs to be checks and balances on the executive branch, and the power of impeachment is basically the check and balance that Congress has. So whatever they decide to interpret as high crimes and misdemeanors is really their judgment call. It could be trivial or it could be significant. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule that it's got to meet a certain threshold.
Gotcha. So I guess a couple of thoughts. In terms of the political effect and the political necessity, the way I've looked at impeachment, which, first of all, when this thing started back in September or whenever, when the transcript was released because of the whistleblower and so on and so forth, this seemed like a much smaller thing to me than what was laid out in the Mueller report with regards to charges of obstruction of justice. And, impeding an investigation. That by itself, I maintain, is impeachable, the Mueller stuff, with regards to obstruction, not quote-unquote collusion, which is not a thing, but obstruction. And here I sat almost like dumbstruck that we were off to the races in September, going, Nancy Pelosi all of a sudden is like, yeah, we're going to do it, it's time to impeach, and all the Democrats are up out of the trenches and running. Democrats in the House are all up, and all these these R+5, R+7 kinds of representatives are out there saying, yeah, let's do it, let's go impeach. And it made me stop and go, well, what is going on? What is the strategy behind this? Because either, to my mind at the time, we're about to either lose our ass in this thing, or they've really got something on him. And that made us, look at what is it being asked for here? He's conditioning military support upon, the announcement, like you said earlier, RJ, the announcement of an investigation, which is not necessarily an investigation of any substance itself. If, according to my understanding of the situation, there is no there with that, but that headline of there's an investigation, a criminal investigation into my political opponent, is something A, of value, and B, damning to the Biden campaign. And to sidebar just briefly with that, it seems weird to me watching these endless debates that, RJ, we've done all the debate reviews so far, watching Biden flounder and do terribly in every debate he's been in. And I'm like, why is he a candidate? How is he still polling so well? I don't understand this. We have to have somebody better than Biden. Everyone thought in basically 2016 up until, when the primary started, Biden was going to be the guy maybe to come in and, because he was Barack's dude and and he was going to come in and he was going to fix this. I know, sorry about the mispronunciation. Hussein Obama. Anyway, and he was going to come in and fix all this. He was going to be the guy, all the crazy Uncle Joe memes and stuff like that. Joe, you a savage. Like, everybody liked him, very well thought of in the public perception at that time, up until, some of his history came out about the busing thing and the fact that he can't talk and he's doddering. And it's like, why is this guy the biggest political threat in the first place? First of all, beggars belief to me currently, but it is what it is. So I'm not a Biden guy really at all. If he's the nominee, I will vote for him, but I'm not a Biden guy. And the fact that the Trump campaign saw him as the biggest threat, that they would need to do this to sort of preempt it. And this, to me, I look at this as the equivalent of like the Benghazi thing on Hillary and the butter emails thing, which is what it led into with Hillary. And it's just some crap to fling at the opponent to muddy the waters, essentially. And what he did was, to me, more importantly than just the violation of the campaign finance law, more important than just withholding aid, which is really dirty, by the way, because Ukraine is at war with Russia. Like, a lot of people don't think about that, but like, Russia has occupied a chunk of the country of Ukraine, and they are currently fighting each other, and there is a military conflict going on right now in this country because of Russian encroachment. It is absolutely true. Whatever else anyone wants to think about, why or whether or not they should, that is happening.
That's a good point.
And we offered them aid, and then we didn't give it to them, and people died because of that. There's absolutely, it's not a huge body count, but there's absolutely a body count attached to and this came out as part of the hearings. I can't remember which guy it was, but talking about, like, instead of just support or just training, like actual weapons to kill the other guy. Certain kinds of missiles that they talked about, and other ordnance and things like that, actual weapons platforms that were going to be, I guess, procured with this funding that was going to be used in the conflict. That was withheld on condition of this announcement into a new investigation into the Bidens, which is a conspiracy theory, just like the CrowdStrike thing is a conspiracy theory. And Chris, I know you disagree with me.
Hold up, give me a sec. Get in here.
You will. Just let me. I'm just painting a picture, and then we can jump into whatever we need to. For all of that, to help himself reelect himself, it is, to me, that is the real abuse, that he is manipulating, our foreign relations with the government we are allies with, and have a vested interest in them continuing to be our allies and continuing to exist. against as a bulwark against Russian encroachment, and that he would kind of put that on the chopping block to self-deal. To me, that is what is truly corrupt about what he's doing. If what I'm saying is correct, and he should absolutely be impeached for it, I think he should also be removed for it. Will he? I think the chances of that are somewhere around zero, maybe a little bit higher, just because these are the political realities. We have a Senate that is controlled by Republicans, Mitch McConnell, who said his own position will be no different than the White House's, and that apparently they're not going to call witnesses, they're not going to do anything. It'll probably just be a straight vote, and it'll be over pretty much before it started. That is my anticipation of how that goes down. My thought is there's two possible purposes for this. And again, I can't read Nancy Pelosi's mind or any Democrat's mind necessarily, but my thoughts are this. One, history will remember what we're all doing right now. History will remember what Congress did. History will remember this moment in time and what we were doing, what was the right thing to do. When we look back at atrocities, that have taken place in this country that are, maybe more severe than this, we understand now with the hindsight what mistakes were made, what should have happened for the most part. People 100 years from now, 200 years from now, are going to look back at this moment and go, what in the hell were these people doing? How did this go on so long? How did we fall this far? This is what I'm really thinking, that history will remember this moment. One. Two, if we know he's not going to be removed, maybe censure is the point. Maybe making a message to educate the American public, those who are not completely balkanized. There's some people who are not that engaged in what's been going on in the minutia and the day-to-day, so they can understand both what the president did and what the Republican-controlled Senate did in response to it. And just the abdication of responsibility, morally, legally, all of it, and let them take that to the polls next year. That, to me, is, if there's any high trajectory for Democrats off of this, that's what it is. Remember what happened here. Get your ass out there and vote next year, unless you want more of this. That's my thoughts on it. Chris, go ahead.
To me, like, you talk about painting a picture, it's like, first go back and look at one thing. Like, yeah, Trump seemed to be indifferent on Ukraine from what I put together for the most part, and he had good reason to be. But also, you're talking about people dying and stuff like that. Trump was one of the first ones to give them aid in 2018. He gave them a whole shipment of Javelin missiles that they had desperately been wanting that Obama never would give them. Obama gave them medical aid and things like that. So, and the Ukraine people are real grateful for that when you watch interviews and stuff with them. So, I'm just saying, add in context that Trump's not completely,
that's fair. Yeah.
F the Ukraine here.
Sure.
But Trump has a lot of things swirling around him, in my opinion, about Ukraine meddling in the election of 2016 and Biden and the corruption tied to there, and then just general corruption in the State Department there too. He definitely had a hard on for Yovanovitch, and the word is she's pretty corrupt. So I don't know. That one's kind of up in the air to me. But Joe Biden, to me, at the very best, is guilty of watching corruption take place right under his nose and maybe he didn't get a big cut himself, but he watched it go on and overlooked it on purpose. And so he basically assisted in it, in my opinion. And there's very good evidence for that. And especially when you lay it out and look at it in the timeline, it's ridiculous. I guess it's circumstantial. I'm definitely no lawyer. RJ, help me out. But
yes, that's circumstantial.
So, okay, February of 2014, Obama makes Joe Biden the point man on Ukraine. And I think there's a good reason. Joe Biden will act like it was some, some dark task. No bullshit. Ukraine is like every rich person and billionaire around the world is like, this is the new untapped market here. Lots of resources being discovered: gold, diamonds, natural gas, oil, stuff like that. So you've got a Russian oligarch who was the minister of ecology in the Ukraine, which means he handles state contracts for energy development. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? He develops a company called Burisma and hands himself contracts for the state. Well, while he's in this position, he also embezzles foreign aid from America and the West, the joint efforts. So that's why he was originally charged. And you said it, his assets were frozen. So Joe Biden's put in place in February of 2014. He ousts Yanukovych, that president, and then helps set in Poroshenko, who turns out to be corrupt as all get out. And then you also see George Soros come over there and start the Anti-Corruption Action Center, and start putting their spin on everything. And then you fast forward to April of 2014, and they freeze Zlochevsky's assets in London, Burisma owner, Russian oligarch. They freeze his assets. 2 weeks later to that date, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer are hired to Burisma. Okay. Just a big coincidence, right? So then the case gets stalled for months right away. The joint efforts are pissed. And then in May, someone in the prosecutor's office takes a bribe. Now, some will say it's Shokin, but there's not. It may not have been Shokin. It could have been someone else. But then, there's no evidence being delivered to London. So the judge has to dismiss it when you fast forward to January of 2015. The case against them gets dismissed there. And that was the one of him embezzling foreign aid. And they seized the aid in London. It was $32 million. And then Kent goes and confirms that someone did take the bribe. And this is in 2015. And then he learns that Hunter Biden is on the board and doing his thing. And then he relays concerns to the vice president's office, because that's where he was directed to take anything concerned with Hunter directly to the vice president's office. And so nothing would happen. And then in July of 2015, Victor Shokin directly says that he was about to call in Hunter Biden to question for several things, including money laundering for Burisma. And then you fast forward to 2016, the case gets reopened. Shokin comes in hot. He raids Zlochevsky's house in Ukraine and seizes a bunch of files and hard drives. 2 weeks later, Joe Biden shows up directly and demands to Poroshenko that he's fired, and Shokin is fired.
Oof. Okay. Before I turn this over, because I know RJ has a lot to say, before I turn this over, you guys have had conversations on Facebook that I've been witness to on multiple occasions. It's gotten a little bit invective. I am hoping this will hit a little bit of a higher trajectory here, and you guys, I imagine you'll keep it civil. I think you're both entirely capable of it. But I know there's very, very deep disagreements. Chris, I also disagree with most of what you just said. But I know RJ's got a lot to say here. So I'm going to turn
those
over
were on
to
my
him.
page, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I mean, I've argued with him on his page before, and too. It's just,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
all
just
back and
saying
forth. It's
that-
Facebook. It's
When you go some places, there are rules. When you come to my place, there aren't any rules. It's one of those. So first and foremost, going back to the call, if someone's spouting a conspiracy theory, there's a really good chance that everything they're saying is a conspiracy theory. So you've already made an allusion to this, David. Trump brought up CrowdStrike. Okay. Mm-hmm. That whole thing, to call it bullshit, is an offense to the shit that comes out of bulls. Because that's a real thing. That actually exists. Servers are not things, people. They don't exist. Nobody can go and steal your server like the Hamburglar,
like it's a
and run it off to Ukraine.
Drive, yeah.
Right? That's not a thing. So like everything Trump said on that call, and as far as I can tell, everything he's ever said about CrowdStrike has been like a boomer level misunderstanding of I don't get how computers work. Like, please make my VCR time show the right time.
And real quick, I agree with everything you're saying right now.
Cool. Okay,
Just
and that's good. That's good. I mean, I think
starting
that
point,
we should be on the same page about that, because that, like, especially what Trump was saying wasn't even the conspiracy theory about CrowdStrike. It was a misunderstanding of conspiracy theory about CrowdStrike.
I have two replies to that.
Go.
It's either a misunderstanding, like you just said, or because he's got a bunch of stuff being thrown at him, or two, it's just him bullshitting on purpose. Like it's hard to tell, man. Is he really that stupid, or does he just say this stuff on purpose because he knows the old people sitting at home watching Fox are eat it up?
And that's a good point.
I seriously think that.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
Something I stopped doing online, I stopped saying, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. By you, I mean the royal you, anybody. I'm like, if you say stupid things, I'm just going to assume you're an idiot, and I'm going to talk to you like you're an idiot. I'm going to call you an idiot. So if the president wants to say stupid things and act like an idiot, I'm just going to assume he's an idiot. So it kind of takes the onus off of me, I guess, to that extent. So you brought up the Javelin missiles. It's not a bad point. Really, what this comes back to is something I said earlier about how diplomacy is a dance. Okay, and literally it comes down to the way that we phrase certain things, who is in charge, what we call a certain country versus what we called it 20 years ago. The Javelin missiles that Trump appropriated were not appropriated under Obama, because the going theory at the time under Obama was that actual lethal weapons being given to Ukraine would be seen as something that would raise tensions. Okay, and I don't think that's wrong. I don't know that it's right. I'm not sure that it was necessarily the right course of action.
It would raise tensions.
Oh, sure. But when Trump became the president, he has, and I mean, this is just true, he has the right to revisit that. And he did. And he gave them Javelin missiles. That's fine. You mentioned Yovanovitch. I don't think there's any credible... I really don't think there's anything credible out there that suggests that she's been anything other than an upstanding public servant. I think it's really unfortunate that her name has been dragged through the mud. I think that during her testimony, she underscored this when she said, if the president wanted to disagree with me, if he wanted to discharge me, he had the right to do so. I just don't see why he needed to drag my name through the mud. I know that there's something going on right now with Rudy Giuliani, who should be disbarred, about Yovanovitch. He was just skulking around in the Ukraine. But I very much doubt that there's anything on Yovanovitch. If there is, then she is incredibly bold, going before Congress and just outright lying for 8 hours. Finally, on the point of Biden, it's not corrupt to have a family member be hired by a company because that company has a corrupt intent. It's only corrupt to act with corruption. So this idea, like the timetable that you rolled out there was impressive, but the fact that there is no evidence, including through the Ukraine's own investigations into Burisma, that there was any corruption connected to Hunter Biden suggests that, yeah, you know what? I agree. He probably wasn't qualified for that job. But someone hiring you for a job that you're not qualified for doesn't make you corrupt. It makes them corrupt.
Yeah, but let's look at this, man. Because I'll keep it real on Trump in return for you in this moment. Hunter Biden is a corrupt motherfucker. We know that already before any of this Ukraine shit. That should be kind of established. He's a sleazebag. He has leveraged his dad all the time, like in numerous scandal stuff. And he's also a drug addict, which, you know what, actually, I don't even have such a problem with that. I have a problem with his dad writing mandatory minimums for possession of crack rock that devastated minority communities, and then the son gets arrested and nothing happens to him, but that's a whole nother story. But let's be real. What value does Hunter Biden offer Zlochevsky and Burisma?
Right.
There is one answer to this question.
Well, no. There's lots of there are lots of answers to the question, but the question that you're asking only results in a corrupt intent on the part of the company.
Yeah, okay. I'll go with you at first there. But keep in mind too, this same company is under investigation that his dad is in charge of, a joint effort with
Yeah, but he's not really
so you're right. Maybe it's not illegal, but it's a direct conflict of interest in a very bad, blatant way.
It's not really a conflict of interest. I understand what you're saying. Biden being the point person made him the spokesperson. This was already
correct.
This was already the stated policy of the United States, the European Union, everybody in the EU, which the Ukraine is not, and nor are they in NATO, and also the International Monetary Fund. They wanted this prosecutor out. So even if there were some tertiary personal benefit to Joe Biden in getting rid of the prosecutor Lutsenko, then it still acted within the bounds of U.S. interest and the allies of the U.S. interest.
And see, there's more stuff, and you just kind of made my point, in my opinion, RJ. You're absolutely right. This predated Joe Biden at Ukraine. The joint efforts had been working on a huge investigation into Zlochevsky, owner Burisma, for a while. They finally were able to pounce on him in April. And then everything gets gummed up at that point. What's the common denominator under that? Joe Biden gets put in place in February, and then in
you got
April,
a whole whiteboard, dude. Wow.
I got a timeline. And in April, they seize his assets. 2 weeks later, Hunter's hired. Then the case is stalled. Then they take a bribe. Then the case is thrown out. This is not a coincidence.
Is
and it gets
yes, it is. There's no connection there.
Let me continue. Let me show you.
Yeah, but no, but you already did this. You already walked us through this. We didn't see the whiteboard before, but all you're doing.
There's more to the story, though. I left off.
Go ahead.
I am excited to hear it.
So, the case does go dormant. It doesn't get dismissed, but the case goes dormant, and the evidence valuably needed in London from Ukraine is purposely slow walked to the point that the judge in London has to dismiss it in January of 15. Then it kind of just sits there, nothing. Everything's good in the world. Hunter's racking in the money. Ukraine, Joe Biden's urging the government to invest more in natural gas, and aka send more money to Burisma that his son works for, which is a direct conflict of interest. But then you get to 2015, and then they're about to bring Hunter Biden in for questioning. And then that's when Joe comes in with the elections. And in February, Shokin makes his move, raids Zlochevsky's house. They immediately, the day after that, this is public record, Devin Archer has a direct meeting with John Kerry at the office in America. And then the next, within 2 weeks, Biden's over there and Shokin is fired. This is the first time any American has ever stepped in and demanded and interfered in any government prosecutor's office like this. So that's one thing. But then this is where it gets fishy. So, okay, Shokin is this corrupt prosecutor that everyone's wanted fired forever, right? So they fire him, and then what do? they bring in Yuri Lysenko, who has no background in prosecution or law. He's not a lawyer. He has no law degree. He has no education or background whatsoever. And they bring him in as prosecutor general, and the case gets completely dismissed under him. And then turns out he's corrupt as all get out too. And then now he's ousted, and the case is back open, and Burisma is being investigated heavily right now. And there's apparently breathing down Hunter's neck again.
Yeah, but there's no corruption that connects Joe Biden to anything there. That's the point. This web that you've just drawn does not connect Joe Biden to wrongdoing in any way.
Okay, I'll grant you this, and everything that I'm building here in my head will hinge on a few pieces of evidence that need to come out, and we'll find out one day, hopefully, if Rudy Giuliani is crazy and full of shit and all this is a conspiracy, or if he actually has some stuff. And one of the things he would have is transcripts between Poroshenko and Joe Biden. And that's what Shokin is screaming at the top of his lungs, basically saying, get those transcripts, get those transcripts.
Can I interject with a question? So you're saying, okay, say Hunter Biden joins the board, and then I can't remember which one it is, Shokin or whoever. Like all of a sudden, like the investigation stalls and it gets slow walked. Is Burisma the only company that is experiencing that sort of boon of having an investigation into corruption or some kind of criminal malfeasance? Has it been slow? Is it unique to Burisma, or is this more of like a pandemic problem in Ukraine? Because I understand Ukraine to be, and still is, a highly corrupt country in terms of, just this sort of issue with, say, like the self-dealing and what have you. It doesn't stand to reason that this thing begins and ends with Burisma, right? There are multiple companies that are sort of acting in the same way or benefiting the same way, right? From this investigator at the time, it was a 2012, 2014, whatever it was, up until he got ousted at the behest of Biden's and the international Joe Biden and the international community, which really is not Joe Biden, right? First of all, it's the United States that Joe is acting on, the will of United States policy, which is Barack Obama and the State Department, I would guess. That they're saying they want him out. The international community is saying they want him out. But was it just to benefit Burisma if there are multiple companies that were under investigation that were being slow walked? That's to me is sort of the what causes some of what you're saying here to unravel a little bit. It wasn't just to help out just Hunter, right? It was helping out. If there was corruption on this part, then a lot of people were benefiting.
Oh yeah.
What are
I
your
mean,
thoughts
I don't.
there?
I don't know enough about the Ukraine to fully really answer that. So, but yeah, I don't think Burisma is the only one corruption case that's there. But contrary to a lot of people I've been having discussions the past few weeks, Burisma was moving its way up on the corruption ladder for a while in certain points. And it's very interesting to me because every time something starts to happen in this company, things from the outside step in and shut it down. And to me, it's just very telling. And I feel like Trump was very vindicated in wanting to know more about all this, because I think it does go deep, actually.
There's another point here, and I know RJ probably has more to say. There's another point here. Given that corruption is probably super widespread in Ukraine, and not just Ukraine, but in a lot of countries that we give aid to, right? There are multiple countries that rate higher. I can't name them off the top of my head. Sort of on the international scale of corrupt countries, or countries with issues of corruption, that we give aid to. without qualification, right? Because that's just part of our international policy. We decided they needed aid. And all of a sudden, it's of a particularly acute interest to Donald Trump that we investigate what happened with this one investigator or one prosecutor because of the son of one political opponent. And we've now zeroed in on that versus all of the corruption in Ukraine and all of the corruption in all of the other countries with which we do not withhold aid for. But aid was withheld because of essentially the Bidens in particular. To me, that causes a lot. If there's other things that raise eyebrows, like the fact that the guy who owns Burisma is, to me, seems pretty obviously corrupt, and how he's escaped these charges and having his assets frozen. So, to me, that has me scratching my head. It's baffling because the guy seems really dirty. He seems shady, super shady. The company itself seems fairly corrupt. But that Trump would target just this one issue of all the issues in the world and of all the issues in Ukraine, it seems to me inescapable because as justification, that he saw it as of particular material benefit to him in his campaign against his likely political rival of trying to pin corruption on Joe Biden because of Burisma and this prosecutor.
Yeah, well, it actually, David, it's a good point. It wasn't his likely political rival, and that's one of the reasons that the Democrats, and I will openly point out, did a very poor job of doing this. There was an April call with Zelensky before the July call, and in the April call, Biden is not mentioned. In the July call, he is. What happened between April and July? Biden declared his nomination for the presidency. He actually became a direct political rival. But the larger point I wanted to make here is that, David, you mentioned this early on, I think at the very onset. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem with this impeachment is the ease at which it is thrown off the rails by whataboutism. We just spent 20 odd minutes talking about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and dealings in the Ukraine that are completely unconnected to what Trump did. And I think that's one of the reasons that, as I pointed out earlier, the polls haven't really moved on this subject. I think that most people's opinion was already baked in, but I don't think there's much being brought to the forefront, and anything that is just being drowned in noise. Let's talk about Hunter Biden instead. Trump just released his 6-page sort of like collection of tweets letter today. Yeah. It's all just obfuscation. Yeah, and that's fine. And that's fine because, like I said, I don't necessarily think that Trump should be removed, even if he is guilty of the things that he has been charged by the House in what will become the articles of impeachment, probably tomorrow, depending on how.
Probably tomorrow, but yeah, I guess there's some variation there, but sure.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you can open a meeting and say, okay, we call this meeting to order, and then the Republicans can start yelling point of order and, parliamentary inquiry and things like that, as we've seen. It could take till Thursday, but Trump's going to be rung up on 2 articles of impeachment, and I don't think that those articles of impeachment are going to move the spirit of the country much. So
no, you're right.
Hey, David, you mind if I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that Biden wouldn't be your first choice to be the Democratic nominee. Uh-huh. Are there other candidates that you like a lot better, or are you still in the process of deciding?
Oh, that is a whole other conversation. It is a fair question. I don't really know. As part of me is I'm not boom or bust on any of these guys. or ladies as it is. I do tend to like Warren. I like how well thought out and educated she is. There's people get caught up in the electability argument. I think who would be a really good president, honestly, I think is Elizabeth Warren. I think she would be a quality president. Is she someone who can win against Trump is an entirely different question. I don't know. Whoever the nominee is, I'm going to vote for them because I think choice at this point is an illusion. And I'm just acknowledging it, being right out front. If it's Joe Biden, I don't like Joe Biden at all. I'll still vote for him. Sure will. If he's the nominee, because I have no choice. And that's the reality. What we're looking at here, this whole process, this whole farcical, in my view, presidency, it really only says we are either four more years of this, or we want to put it to a stop. And it comes to voter turnout, and it comes to solidarity. Whoever the nominee is, they need to be backed up by everybody else. Whatever daylight between their positions were, or whatever kind of invective they got into in the debates, all of that stuff, like all of it. Let it go. Let it go, fall in. It's one thing that that Republicans are traditionally much, much better at is falling in line behind whoever their candidate is and not doing the squabbling. They respect that that authority, and they fall under it, and they go out and they vote reliably, which is why they beat Democrats, because they go, oh, this isn't quite my flavor. I don't like it. I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to go third party or whatever, which I actually did in the last election. I voted for Gary Johnson, mea culpa as ever. I have to say it, and I have to apologize every time.
You voted for Gary Johnson in the last election?
I sure did. I sure did, because I didn't like Hillary. I didn't, and I don't.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm genuinely surprised.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, but like, I don't.
I voted for Hillary 3 times.
Did you? There you go.
Here's the deal. Living in Tennessee, it really doesn't matter who we vote for, because Tennessee's going to vote for whoever the Republican is.
It doesn't matter, yes. Thank you, Electoral College.
Yeah, I voted for a third party as well, and knowing that it wouldn't make any difference. I mean, if
Did you
Trump
vote for Castle?
No, I voted for some local guy. That was actually a Knoxville person. I think his name was Mike Smith or something like that.
Huh. Okay.
But yeah, the way I looked at it was, if Trump had a hard time winning Tennessee, then he was going to get toasted in the election anyway. So he didn't need me to help him.
No, Tennessee's like plus 50 Republican.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So
we're all the way, man.
Yeah, if Tennessee's even anywhere within like 10 points, then he was going to be in serious trouble.
Something to consider here in terms of voting for third parties. If you're in a state where it doesn't matter, third parties get federal matching. Yeah, like Indiana. Voting for a third party may make a difference. If a third party cracks 5% in a federal election, they get federal matching funds, which is huge for those
and
third parties. So
that was part of the gambit, but like, I still feel bad, because I think deep down, I knew, because I assumed, like so many others did, that Hillary was just going to win, and I didn't have to hold my nose. I could say for the next 4 years, well, I didn't vote for Hillary, so I didn't have to take crap from conservatives about it. Being real honest, that had a lot to do with why I went third party. I felt like I was safe. Maybe I can help crack, like you said, with the libertarian vote, and seeing, the funding match and pulling more votes away from Republicans would be the best way of turning Tennessee purple, right? That is a strategy. I believed in it. But also part of me didn't want to have to live with, yes, I voted for Hillary, and listening to oh, that's your girl, and having to defend every stupid thing she said or did for the next 4 years. That was part of it. So maybe that's the real reason for the mea culpa. But there you have it. Yeah, this cycle, I will vote blue no matter who. I am yellow. What is it? Yellow dog Democrat, I think is the phrase. That's where I am this election cycle, and hopefully this election cycle only.
Drew has actually suggested that the term is newsy. So
he's making fun of my hat. Yes, it's called a newsy or a brogue. Yes.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead, Chris.
Because you guys have got me back into politics over this issue.
You're welcome.
I've been out of them on purpose for like 8 years or more. Yeah. But this is going to sound stupid, but what is it so bad about Trump as a president that y'all don't like?
I think he is a dangerously incompetent and self-dealing bigot, and he's going to be an embarrassment we're going to have a hard time living down in the next several decades.
When I read the Federalist Papers, the fears of the founders about megalomania, about monarchy, about someone placing themselves ahead of the public interest are all realized in Trump. And that's my problem with him.
That's much more eloquent.
I actually have my own objections to Trump that are different from the other two. I mean, I look at it very differently than you guys do, actually. But sort of my set of important issues are different than what you guys are. So, there's definitely a lot to criticize Trump about. I mean, I could criticize him all day long. I mean, he's done absolutely nothing about the ballooning federal deficit, which is was just continuing to expand at unprecedented levels. That's and he doesn't care. It's like these out of control entitlement programs. There's no interest in reining them in. So there's a lot. It's really a big deal. I mean, at some point, the government's going to run out of money. I mean, we're going to go bankrupt. The interest we pay on the national debt is going to become a sizable percentage of our budget. So that would probably be the biggest criticism I have. But I actually have warmed up to him to some degree. Not that I consider myself to be an admirer of him by any means, but the thing that I appreciate about him the most is his nomination of originalist judges to the court systems, which to me is pretty important because that's really kind of the lasting legacy. I mean, presidents come and go, laws can change, you can raise or lower taxes, whatever, but judges are around for life and they never go away. So they basically have an impact on society for decades. So the fact that he's made such an impact on the court system is something that I appreciate. I didn't think he was going to do it. One of the reasons why I didn't vote for him, I actually didn't trust him to be a conservative at all. I figured he would basically be a leftist with Republican clothes, and I just didn't have any faith that he was going to do anything, that I would value.
Yeah. Well, okay, I can appreciate that. It's actually one of the reasons that you like him a little bit, or actually is in my view, some of the most lasting damage that he will do as a president is his Supreme Court appointees and his basically padding the various federal benches.
Right, and you have to take into account there, David, that the problem
we're not fans of originalism.
We have a Google Doc on this if you want to read about it. But really, the problem here is that the Republican Party's obstructionism goes back to 2010, and 6 years of backlog in the appointment of judges to federal courts is a big deal. So what the election of Trump, along with the majority of Republicans in the Senate, has allowed is essentially a long delay in the norm of American politics, which is when someone is promoted to a judgeship, the Senate takes them up on the merits and generally confirms them. Sometimes no. And that goes for a Supreme Court down to district courts.
Yeah.
Trump and the Republican Party have taken the advantage of blocking a lot of nominees to the federal courts, particularly the federal courts, notably on the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland.
Well, Trump actually had nothing to do with Merrick Garland. He wasn't in power when
No, but Trump has everything. But Trump, no. Trump had everything.
Yeah.
Everything to do with Merrick Garland, because that was the Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
If Hillary wins, what are the Republicans going to do?
He or someone even more to the left would have been appointed to fill that seat.
Well, he would have been brought up.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if the Republicans still held the majority, which they do,
Right.
I mean,
They would have
75,000
stonewalled.
votes over 3 states. Trump loses, Hillary wins, same Senate.
Yeah, I mean, they
They
probably
could
would
have they could have held
Bidens.
that open forever if they wanted
Oh,
to.
absolutely, they sure could. Yes, yeah.
So,
I mean, it's. I mean, both. Unfortunately, the courts have become politicized. So basically,
unfortunately, politics has infected the courts. Is the way I would state it, and I don't mean that just to be pedantic.
Yeah.
I mean, these sorts of plays are what are causing the problem on the courts.
Well,
Individual judges should not be out there making decisions based on political bent.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone probably, like, I bet 90-ish% of America would agree with that.
Yeah,
right? We'd all be on the same page.
And I think it used to be that way back a long time ago, before, probably the 70s. The courts were basically non-political for the most part, and nobody really cared who sat on the court because they were basically a bunch of technocrats interpreting rules.
Right.
But then
it was always political. It was just political with a, like, way to the side, right? The politics were not the point.
Yes, but something happened. I think it's happened around the Clarence Thomas or the Bork. The Bork thing kind of changed everything.
Well, Bork changed everything.
That's a really good point. Yeah, Bork, because he was an originalist and because he said things during his confirmation hearing that the Senate found somewhat terrifying.
And because
Bork became a verb, right?
Bork supported Nixon. That was the problem.
Yeah. So ever since then, I mean, the courts have been political, and every battle to the Supreme Court is like a mini constitutional convention where you have these high-pitched, battles and people digging in, and it's like it's the fate of the world is at stake, because the courts really, the way I look at it is, if the courts have this much power, then the system is broken, because I don't think the founders ever intended for the courts to decide every weighty matter of society. I mean, that was really more the job of the legislature that the voters have input over. You know what I'm saying?
Jump in real fast.
Yeah.
Who is the most leftward icon on the Supreme Court?
I'd say Ginsburg.
Right. I would agree.
Yeah.
So she is just so leftist, and I'm not calling you out here at all. I think you would agree with this. So she was confirmed in 1993.
Yeah.
What do you think the vote was on the?
I think it was pretty high. It's probably plus 75 plus.
It was 96-3.
Yeah, Scalia was confirmed like 90 something to what, 1 or 2, right?
Yeah, because they were jurists.
Yeah,
they were clearly people.
And by the way, they were also friends with each other.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I know. Yes, that story is wonderful. People should look it up.
James points that out to me all the time. I'm like, I still hate his rulings. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I am not a fan of Scalia.
I love Scalia. I think Scalia is like a god. I mean, I wish they cloned him, and like there was like 9 copies of him on the Supreme Court.
I wish that would happen only if the Supreme Court immediately fell into a fire. The Scalia was a great writer. I'll give him that. Great writer. Don't agree with him, but
why? But why do you not agree with him? I mean, what's wrong with interpreting the Constitution as it was originally understood to be?
There
are a couple problems with that, and I don't think we should get into it. I think David's
This is usually when we have Haley with us. This is usually when her eye starts twitching, when I start banging on originalism.
Yeah. However, if you're really interested, David can send you a Google Doc that lists out problems with originalism.
It's intended humorously, but I think in its sincere, like, judicial philosophy format, I think it's self-refuting. I think in practicality, most people who call themselves originalists are people who are trying to game legalese for conservative political outcomes. I think that would be the short and sweet version. I think that it's unsound as a philosophy. If you turn to Federalist 70, 78, I want to say. And sort of in the words of Hamilton, it's 76 or 78. I want to say it's maybe 78. But that, if a law should violate the manifest tenor of the Constitution, it should be, ruled as unconstitutional, which one implies judicial review, and two, meaning you're not supposed to Talmudically, parse the verbiage to see what kind of political outcome you can get out of it. You're supposed to take the spirit of the law and understand what it meant at the time and how it should apply. What is the motivating moral force behind a law, and in that view interpret the law, rather than saying, well, it didn't say the famous case, and you said you like Scalia. It was regarding cruel and unusual punishment. And it was regarding somebody had a drug possession charge or something like that. That went to the Supreme Court. He had cocaine or something like that. And whether or not it is cruel and unusual to sentence someone to life in prison or something like that for possession of cocaine. Okay. Which is by itself a non-violent crime. And he said, according to him, well, at the time the law was written about punishment, that was it both cruel and unusual semantically at the same time to, put someone to death or put someone in the stockades or to sentence someone to life for a nonviolent crime, in the 18 whatevers when the law was written. Well, no, at the time it wasn't. Therefore, it's perfectly permissible constitutionally to sentence someone to life in prison for possession of cocaine, or for bouncing a bad check or something like that. Which
let me just respond.
Which he tried to overrule, basically.
Well, so here's I actually listen to I'm in my spare time at work when I'm writing code, I'll listen to people doing interviews with each other on YouTube and stuff. I actually learn a lot. It's almost like being paid to go to school. It's pretty cool. But I've listened to a lot of interesting interviews with Scalia. And he basically, one of the interviewer said, what about this cruel and unusual punishment attitude you have? And he says that people caricature his viewpoint. It's that basically, that his position is that the Constitution should be interpreted as it was originally understood. So like people will argue against the death penalty, saying that violates cruel and unusual punishment. But he basically points out that when these death penalty laws were established, people knew about the death penalty. It didn't become cruel, and unusual in the intervening decades. So basically, he's basically reiterates that, look, it's not my job to make these policies. It's the legislature's job. If you don't like the law, vote for someone who will change it. I'm not going to take my opinion and ram it down your throat because I think it should really be this instead of what it says. Well,
okay. So I guess the two problems I have with that is a lot of times that's the originalism. Oh, we're just calling balls and strikes kind of thing. We're just umpires of the law.
Right.
But that is a nice thing to say when the political process has been strangleholded. And I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. There's a stranglehold in the political process where there's not going to be any change, and it's a way of saying, I don't have to do anything. That's one. The political outcome that I prefer will maintain the same.
Yeah.
And two, it also ignores effectively moral progress. What might have been considered cruel, in the 1300 Saxony to burn a witch at the stake. I didn't say that's just a Tuesday. That's not considered cruel. But we know a little bit better now, don't we? And if the idea was to create prohibitions against cruel kinds of punishments, we understand that, say, burning at the stake is not a thing that we should do. Just because it was okay then.
I don't think anyone's argued that people should be burned at the stake. So that's kind of a.
No. Okay, so
I've got a couple people here.
I think
Drew's just here to insult my hat. Go ahead, Drew.
I know. And I just want to put on the record, I disagree. I like your hat.
Thank you.
Normally, I don't like those hats. I think that they work for you.
I'm not a hat guy either.
I like the hat. I like the hat. I can't get that newsboy.
Lightning in a bottle.
No. It's definitely Newsies. Newsies all day long.
Yeah.
I hear that. But I like it.
Stick with it. It's you. I mean, it's your trademark.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm just hating on it because I want to.
I know that's just Drew. He's just grumpy cat in human form.
Grumpy cat died, man. That's mean.
That's cool. I'm dead inside.
See?
Oh, wonderful.
It's perfect.
That is wonderful. Yeah, I think that it's difficult not to look at laws as living, from my perspective, in the living constitution sort of definition, because we pass laws and then things change. The same laws that meant something on day one don't mean the same thing on day 1,000 as they do on day 10,000, as they do on day 100,000, and yet they're still written down. I think that it's implicit in the idea of having a society that if you're going to pass a law, that law is going to be interpreted based on the current state of the republic, and that goes constitutionally, that goes state constitutionally, and that goes down to local ordinances. I don't see how that doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, we have laws that, and things change, but we also have elections, and we elect people to amend the laws or pass new laws or repeal the old laws that don't make any sense.
Well, yeah, not necessarily though. Maybe we elect people to pass new laws if the old laws don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if the old laws do make sense in the current mores of the time, then we should just apply them that way.
Well, sure. I mean, if there's a need to, but the originalist would say that this is what the legislative process is for. These legislatures are accountable to the voters. If they pass laws that the people don't like, they can kick them out of office and vote someone else in and pass different laws. Who do you want to be your ruler? Do you want to be?
No.
Do you want to be someone that you have power to vote for or kick out of office, or do you want to be some unelectable person that is in there for life, and basically there's nothing you can do about it? If Ruth Bader Ginsburg decides tomorrow that whatever, we all need to just eat broccoli. What recourse do we have from this judicial oligarch just handing down edicts from on high? There's no election. There's nothing we can do about it.
Right, but we do. Those people can be impeached.
That's next to impossible to do. That's a very unreasonable standard.
No, we've impeached people. We've impeached judges.
But that is a totally broken system. If your only recourse is to impeach somebody,
haven't we been talking about how broken impeachment?
Yeah, no, I mean we're coming back to impeachment though, right? This is built into the system. If a person makes a statement, and that statement can't be interpreted within the mores of the time in which both it was stated and in which it's being interpreted, how can a person? Language doesn't mean anything anymore. I really philosophically think that a living constitution, one that is interpreted within the construct of today, rather than the 1700s, is the correct way to determine the rights of Americans and the right way to interpret where we should go as a country.
I completely disagree with. I mean, because that is so arbitrary.
William, I think you actually do agree with a lot of what RJ said. If you think about it, I'll give you a quick example.
Sure.
You believe in the Second Amendment, I'm sure. But do you believe everyone should have chemical weapons if they want?
Well, I mean, no, I don't think so. I think that.
But if you take Scalia and you interpret it by the letter, I mean, I should be able to buy an Abrams tank if I want.
Well, I don't know if Scalia had that view. If he thought you could buy a tank
William, I know your point. Scalia actually said, no, and that people shouldn't necessarily have weapons of war. He was talking more about an individual right to bear arms. But I understand Chris's argument as well, that he's talking about people who have a particular view that they regard as a originalist view, which is absolutist of the Second Amendment, saying, well, right to bear arms, anything is an infringement. Sure. Therefore, where's my nuke and Abrams tank and so on and so forth.
Well, that would be an extreme interpretation that I don't think anybody has or very
serious person. Yeah, I'll grant you that.
Yeah,
it goes to RJ's point that it has to be fluid as technology change. I mean, the four founding fathers couldn't foresee aircraft. I mean, back then everyone could own what the government had in the army. I mean, a cannon or a musket and a sword. I mean, and a horse.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and that's a good point. I mean, I personally, I'm not, I'm not really a big firearms advocate. I mean, I think that people have the right to own them, but I mean, I'm not really a gun person per se. So, it's
no one's gonna take your card, man. It's fine.
No. I mean, I it's fine. I mean, the way I personally look at that is that the Constitution says people can own arms. I mean, is that like if you can have a hunting rifle, that basically fulfills that, checks that box, as it were. It doesn't give you the right to buy a flamethrower or build a bomb. You know what I'm saying? I think that the legislature is well within its rights to regulate, what that means. But,
and I didn't want to sidetrack us.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I thought RJ was right.
Yeah.
On his
No, I think that we're all basically agreeing on this point.
Yeah.
But I do think we're kind of far from where we started.
Yeah.
We are
way off on impeachment. You asked me a question about who I support in the election, and we just got into other things.
But
Which
let
is
me
cool.
throw
It's
this out
actually
there.
kind of refreshing, to be honest.
Let me throw this one. I will give you this. No one's brought this up, but I mean, I'm surprised the Democrats haven't done this. I mean, I do think there are things that they could legitimately complain about Trump. And the Ukraine, withholding the aid to Ukraine is probably the best example of the current thing. But he's done other things too. I mean, I don't think he had any right to garnish the money for the defense bases to use to build the wall. I think that was clearly an abuse of power, and I say that as someone who supports building a border wall. I mean, even though I think we should do it the right way, you shouldn't just seize money that's clearly meant for other purposes.
Well, one, agree. Two, I'm also not against national security or border security, right?
Yeah.
I just think a wall is a stupid eternity project that Trump wanted to make his legacy of. It seems more and more like that's not a thing that's really going to happen.
And David, just to jump in here real fast.
I should be behind the wall, Drew, but go ahead, RJ.
Yeah. So no one ever had a problem with strategic walls, right? Like, we've been building them for 40 years plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of Trump's wall has been like a problem because, first of all, Trump said it would be a wall from sea to sea, and then he kind of retracted that and said that it would be different. Like, if we're going to make strategic walls based on the input of the military and immigration services, where walls are needed,
And like architects,
like no one cares. It's the strategery of walls, as Drew Joyner might put it.
Yeah,
but
he might put it that way. He might.
But
OW would say that.
Yeah, but like the problem with Trump is he needs to state everything in the superlative. He needs everything is the best or the worst it's ever been.
Yeah.
No one has ever been more maligned as a president than Donald Trump.
No.
That's probably not fucking true, right? Like, Andrew Jackson was our president, and he was a fucking asshole. Everyone hated Andrew Jackson.
Yep.
He had like a liquor party on the front lawn of the White House during his inauguration.
That's awesome.
Which is actually awesome, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But
Didn't he also destroy the Federal Reserve or something? He had like
he tried to. He tried to. Yeah, that was like trying to undo Hamilton, which I also saw Hamilton for the first time this past weekend.
How was it?
I highly suggest that everyone spend all of your money and go see Hamilton whenever
My girlfriend's not to interject. My girlfriend's son is a devotee of Hamilton. He has listened to like all the songs like a million times, and he knows like all these historical facts now, and he like quizzes me, and I fail miserably most of the time.
Right,
much to his delight. So good on you, Owen. Go ahead.
Ain't no way. They ain't gonna turn me gay.
I still hate musicals, but like it's a lot of good history.
I love musicals, but this
I don't, but it's all right.
This is just beyond. Like, go see it.
Okay.
Spend the $500 on 2 seats.
Oh God,
I know
no,
it hurts.
I can't do that. No,
I know it hurts.
I got medical bills, bro. It's
Yeah. No, I
those
know it
come
hurts.
first.
Look, you'll probably live
Speaking
through
of
it.
healthcare for all,
But bringing this full circle.
sure.
All right. Impeachment.
Yes, let's bring it back.
Should we impeach Trump? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is impeachable. Should the Democratic House have ever closed the impeachment inquiry? No, that was stupid. They should have kept it open, fought everything in the courts, got every piece of information they could on Trump, who you know is dirty, right? Like everyone knows he's got shit on him. And then just put it out in public. But they determined that going through a very narrow impeachment process based solely on the Ukraine call of July 2019 was the right way to go. So here we are. To reiterate, I think Trump is impeachable on that call and on his general foreign policy toward Ukraine. I think we often hear too many Democrats talk about the call itself like it's a problem. All of the foreign policy that he was pushing out through both the regular, the Yovanovitches of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and the irregular, the Rudy Giuliani's of the world, was suggesting that if Ukraine did not start an investigation, or at least announce one, they weren't getting this money and they weren't getting their meeting. So I think I think it's impeachable. I just don't think it's removable. I think it is probably worthy of censure. And I think that at the end of the day, the conversation we had earlier about whether this moved the polls, it didn't. That doesn't mean the Democrats were totally wrong on it, but it didn't help them. This didn't make Trump any less likely to be reelected in November 2020. So I think this is mostly a wash, and I don't see the Senate trial going more than like 7 days.
I was going to say minutes, but yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's about, effectively how long it'll be. I guess I am a little bit surprised before we started this. I said, well, there's probably not going to be any daylight between RJ and myself. There is a little bit of daylight. We agree on the facts. I think he's removable because if the facts are as I understand them to be, he has abused his office to try and benefit himself in the 2020 election by involving a foreign government. Effectively or ineffectively, to much point and purpose, given, Joe Biden's qualities. That aspect is immaterial. That he is the president, and he's not about fulfilling his oath of office right now. He's about helping himself out, and it is a total embarrassment. For that, he should be removed from office, in conjunction with the crimes that he's committed along the way in doing that. And it has to do with Yovanovitch and the whole thing. Is just terrible. We will be remembered very poorly, not only for electing this guy, but if also we do nothing to get him out. We at least now have for posterity, he's going to be impeached, even if they do nothing in the Senate, and let that be the message for 2020, that we did that our side did what they were supposed to do, and look at the dirty, corrupt Republicans, or the Republicans that just don't care, or the fact that American society is in an epistemic crisis, or one person's ignorance is just as good as somebody else's knowledge. Isaac Asimov, like that is where we are. But let it be remembered, sort of this moment, and that some people did what the fuck they were supposed to do, and that's where I'm at on impeachment. Chris?
Yeah, the other side, I think, and I don't know that I'm fully here, but the pro-Trump side would argue that he was looking at known corruption. He wanted to see where this Zelensky leadership presidency was going to fall. Was he really with Trump, or was he going to work to undermine Trump? I feel like Trump had a lot of suspicions with State departments and everyone involved in Ukraine, because I don't think, when I say that the Ukraine meddled in 2016, I don't think CrowdStrike. I'm thinking of Chalupa working with the DNC digging up dirt on Trump campaign managers mid-election.
Who?
And Chalupa.
Chalupa?
Yeah, you can get it at Taco Bell.
Yeah.
That was okay. Sorry.
With
I don't know
sauce.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay,
But,
well,
okay.
Look up Alexander Chalupa and Paul Manafort in the DNC and the Ukraines in the 2016 election. So this is the clear point that when the Republicans I'm listening to that I agree with to an extent, when they talk about 2016 Ukraine election meddling, they agree it's not equivalent to Russia with a top-down government order, like Russia's Putin, from what we think, sending out the order, go F this up. I don't think the Ukraine did that. The problem is you have a bunch of people working inside the government, though, that kind of have these agendas. And it seemed like, and you have Trump running on a semi-isolationist policy in the wars, and he's been consistent on that back when he was a Democrat. And they're freaking out. Meanwhile, if Hillary gets elected, all systems go. Democrats are pro-war. Don't let that fool you. So I think Trump scared the shit out of people, like Colonel Vindman. Like, if Trump gets elected and wins, all their plans that they've been working on for however many years could potentially be shitted on. And and like you said, Trump's been indifferent to Ukraine as far as, am I going to give him the aid? Not, I don't know. Do I trust him? Do I care about him? Fuck him. Whatever. But to me, I mean, it just is part of what his policy was. He ran on that. And so it's like, I think a lot of people that are going to vote Trump are looking at it as, why are we over there fighting proxy wars, meddling in other countries, potentially pissing off Russia? How would we feel if they put a base in Mexico?
Okay.
So I mean, that's part of it. And then you see the corruption there. And then I think the people see a double standard, and a lot of people are like, it's a whataboutism, but I think other people, I view it more practical of, it's kind of like war. If someone bombs you, it's like, is it a whataboutism to go, they just did this to me? I mean, you literally have I've already laid it out. I mean, like,
I hear
go
you.
ahead.
So, as I said at the start of this thing, I think we sort of lost the thread along the way. Even if, the Bidens did some corrupt stuff in Ukraine and so on and so forth, it doesn't negate, the illegal actions on the part of Trump, of probably Giuliani, and all these others in the nexus, and that's why, I keep raising whataboutism, which it seems like it kind of gets like dismissed or whatever, but like you and I know, because we have these debates and we talk about philosophy and theology and things like that. Understanding that whataboutism is, it's essentially, logically it's a red herring, right? Because one thing being true doesn't negate another thing from also being true. And if it's brought up in a counterpoint, it's not a refutation. It's, it comes down to an appeal to like hypocrisy, essentially, that, A says, B did this thing, right? Well, well, A is a hypocrite because of some other thing. The logical format of that, like in a syllogism, isn't therefore B is innocent of the thing A accused them of, right? And that's where we are. I'm saying because we're still right here, without without going off down the rabbit trail of having 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute conversation about what the Bidens did or did not do. It doesn't change what Donald Trump did. And
Correct.
That's why I tried to
guess,
stay focused on that.
And I was trying to remember this thought. I just remembered it now. Yeah, without going back to the Bidens, part of me, like, to make a judgment call too, I need to hear the phone call. It's one thing to read the transcript. I maybe you don't agree, but man, I really wish I could hear the tone of the conversation, because if this is more calculated on Trump's part, okay, then I'll lean a little bit more towards guilty for sure. But part of me just wonders if this wasn't. It sounds like it was in the flow of a conversation of like, oh, by the way, like, will you just like look into this? Like, I'm hearing a lot of crazy shit. It would tickle my fancy if I could find some real dirt on Joe Biden. Like, that would just be amazing if that fell in my lap, with this new president friend of his.
Tone of voice may add something. I'll grant you that. Also consider that basically once this phone call was recorded, they went and hid it like on their sort of like a I don't want to say secure server, but like they put it under sort of like classified information. It was supposed to be like a routine, like congratulatory call. It was not under any particular clearance. And as soon as the call was done, they're like, we gotta hide this thing, and which is essentially what they did until the whistleblower came out, and then the synopsis of the transcript came out. Also,
but apparently
also
that's happened to
if it's
a number of calls. There are a number of calls that Trump has made that have been retroactively like saved to high security, so no one sees them.
Yeah, it's the casualness of the problematic remarks that he makes, I think, is just testament to that. First of all,
yeah, but how can you blame him? I mean, this is why.
Well, I do.
I don't fully. I'm not a Republican, so don't hold.
Sure.
But I sometimes see their side, because while I do think Trump is not great or has corrupt tendencies himself, it's like it takes a corrupt person to go fight corrupt. I mean, it's like our tiger is bigger than your tiger. And the people know he's corrupt to an extent. It's like every politician is. We put up with so much of it, but it's like, are you going to do good on the real issues that I care about? To me, you look at Trump like this, and look at what we just found with the Inspector General's report, for God's sakes. I mean, and then you see Vindman and people like that. Like, he's got people all around him working hard to undermine his presidency. I mean, there's really good evidence for that.
Is it undermine his presidency or expose his corruption and criminality?
And expose
those can be the same thing.
Yeah, and expose the fact that whatever it is that Trump wants is not in congruence with U.S. policy, like
U.S. interests. Yeah,
I hear that, but when I hear that, the way I see it now is I hear USA policy, but I interpret it CIA policy.
Well, no, I mean, not with because we have a long-standing support of Ukraine. First of all, in regards to all this, it is in our best interest and has been and will continue to be for a long time to support an independent Ukraine. Right?
Is it though?
I
don't think we want Russia like re-annexing like the entirety of Ukraine. No.
Right. But David, no, David. Is it though?
Stop. Okay. Let's back up a little bit. Okay. Okay. So before we got off on that rabbit trail, I was talking about the whataboutism and the muddying of the waters, generally speaking, and whether or not Trump has committed just sort of casually criminal things. The phone call, we got a synopsis of the transcript. The phone call was like 30 minutes, and it's like a few page transcript. Like, we don't know the whole details of the thing. There may be something in tone of voice, if we actually heard it, might add a little bit of context. The other thing I wanted to add to that is Trump already knew at that time, was it Taylor, I think, that already knew that aid was being withheld. Zelensky, on the other end of that call, at the time didn't know aid was being withheld. That didn't, till, monies received didn't happen until like a few days later. And so from his perspective, it seems inescapable to me to say, okay, Donald Trump asked me to do this. Almost 400 million in aid, or is it billion? I don't even know anymore.
Million.
It's million.
But
thank
it's
you.
350.
300 something. Okay, so 300 something million in aid. I was expecting on this day, didn't happen within a few days of Donald Trump asking me to do something. If anybody with just a little bit of savvy for situations where they're not going to be completely on the nose about what's being asked of you, seems to me like the writing's on the wall. That's a little bit of interpretation on my part. Feel free to push back on
I want to clarify something. I'm confused. Are you saying Zelensky at the time of the conversation knew that the aid had been withheld, or
No.
are you saying he didn't?
He did not know.
So how does that help? Doesn't that help Trump?
No, because Trump did know the aid was being withheld because he already told him to withhold it.
Trump
I have a
knew,
problem.
but Zelensky doesn't know. So you can't say Zelensky's feeling pressure to
I have
just
a problem.
go.
Not until after the call and the aid doesn't arrive. He understands what's being leveraged at that point. Is what I'm saying. He was
Okay, I see what
an
you're
ask
saying
was
now.
made, and then all of a sudden he understands what's being made conditional
I have a
upon the
problem.
ask. Go ahead. I'm almost out of
Normally,
scotch, by
what
the
we
way.
say in terms of even criminal offenses
Mhm.
is that ignorance of the law is not an excuse, right?
Generally, yes.
So the money that was appropriated to Ukraine was done in public.
Mhm.
It was done as an appropriation from Congress. How can we possibly say that Ukraine didn't know it existed?
No, they knew the aid was coming. They didn't know the hold was coming.
Correct. Yes.
That's what I'm
No,
saying.
no. Forget that. How could they possibly know that the aid was being withheld unless they knew that it existed in the first place?
Right.
Okay. They
I'm
know it
following. Go
existed.
ahead.
Right. So if they knew Congress had already appropriated the aid, based on the fact that Congress had already appropriated the aid, how could, on the call, for example, how could Ukraine not know that the aid was being withheld based on the demands of the Trump administration?
How would they not know the aid was being withheld?
Yeah.
Well, because so
No. This is one of the defenses of the Republicans. It's that they never knew.
And Drew, shut up about logic puzzles. I hate logic puzzles. I don't have enough time to figure them out. Okay, I ran out of time on the damn test. Thanks for bringing it up. Two sections of that shit on the LSATs. Anyway.
But one of the defenses is Ukraine never knew this aid was being withheld. If they didn't know it was being withheld, how could it possibly be part of a quid pro quo?
Because they figured it out a few days later.
Well, they should have figured it out the day the fucking law was passed, right? If I were a country and another country was like, here, have $391 million.
Yes.
I would at least pay attention. I don't know what my country's stance is there, but I would at least pay attention. Assuming Ukraine knew the day that the appropriation was made, how can Republicans argue that the Ukrainians didn't understand that the aid was being withheld as a condition of doing an investigation or at least announcing it? And that is one of their arguments.
I don't know. That's a really weird argument. I'm maybe not following that thread exactly. You may have to walk me through it, but to my knowledge, without being to know, okay, so the money was appropriated, and to know what day that money was expected to be, released to them, knowing those two things, and the call happened after it was approved and before it was supposed to be released, they would not have been able to know unless somebody
No, it was
them.
That's way off.
Okay, like I said, walk me through it then.
Yeah. So Congress appropriated aid. The executive branch can totally withhold that for certain reasons. None of which are...
Drew, shut up. Go ahead.
None of which are investigating a political rival. So the Congress passes the aid. Everyone in the Trump administration, the regular Trump administration, says, yeah, give him the money. He withholds the aid.
Mm-hmm.
And then he only ever releases it once it becomes clear that, well, back to the original.
Well, it comes back to the whistleblower.
Yeah, well, no, Congress is actually investigating him. So
yes, as a result of the whistleblower, but yes.
Right.
Investigation opens, it is released. Yes.
Right. So how was that not a violation of his public trust?
I mean, it absolutely is. I mean, but it's because, yes, aid can be withheld, but it has to be with cause. No cause was ever given. That's my understanding of how that particular privilege of office works. That he can choose to withhold aid, but he has to give a justification. No justification was given, right? What am I missing? You look. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to James right now. He's got some fantastic point he really needs to make, and it's esoteric, and he's just gonna drag me until I get it. Just say it, or somebody else jump in here.
All I'm saying here is that Trump withheld aid until he was pressured.
Yes.
Okay. So that alone is probably impeachable.
I mean, it's technically illegal, sure.
Well, no, not illegal. It's not illegal. It's just a violation of public trust. Once he violates public trust, he can be impeached. And this brings me back to my original point here, like 2 hours ago, which is...
You're losing me, man. I'm almost out of Black Label. Go ahead.
Sorry, man.
It's all right.
I'm just saying, going back to the original, I think Trump can be impeached for asking for a foreign government to investigate a political rival, but I don't think he should be removed for it.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. But that doesn't answer the, well, here's their defense question of how would they not know, essentially, that aid was being withheld? Between that, I mean, that is what you asked me. Between
no,
aid being approved,
I'm just saying I don't understand how a country that is relying upon very important aid from a an international ally doesn't know what's being passed through their Congress, our Congress. Like, they had to know.
But what reason would they have to suspect? That's what I'm saying. Until that
Suspect-
call happened, and then days later, the aid they were supposed to get doesn't show up.
No,
How
no,
would
no.
they-
I mean,
how
it
would they know
happened like
prior?
it happened like months beforehand.
Was it
This-
months?
Yeah, months.
I thought it was a matter of days. I'm sorry, my timeline must be messed up. We
No,
are
no,
like
no,
way
that's-
the fuck off in the weeds, by the way. And also,
Right.
William, sorry for all the cussing. I know that you're probably not a huge fan of that.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm learning a lot by listening to you guys talk.
Okay.
I
appreciate that.
I didn't know much about really all the details on the impeachment stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you want to, I could act like Captain America, and I could say language. Every time. Somebody...
I mean, do it if you feel
No,
compelled
I
to do
wouldn't
so.
do it.
You know,
It's fine. It's good. It's
I
good.
try not to.
I'm not
Anybody. I'm
offended
not
at all.
deliberately trying to tick off.
No,
So-
no. You're cool. It's
okay.
good.
Yeah, but RJ, like I thought it was a matter of days. Like the aid was scheduled to arrive like days after the call, and then it didn't happen, and then it's like, oh, okay, the other shoe was dropped at this point. This is what I'm being asked to do. I didn't realize it was, you said like a month or months before the call. That if that is accurate, then my timeline is way off. I don't know. RJ's not responding. Yeah, I don't know. That is fishy. And Chris, if I can hit you back again, did you I feel like you understand my point from earlier, and I think it's just this obsession with, well, maybe the Democrats, maybe the Bidens also have to be corrupt and hypocritical and so on and so forth. To me, all of that is the intended narrative of, okay, well, Trump did some corrupt stuff, but look, the Democrats did corrupt stuff too, and they're not mad at their guy. They're a bunch of hypocrites. Let's dismiss them now, which is the Tukoku fallacy, right? That is it in a kernel, basically. Even if it's true, right?
You're right, and I do technically. I agree with you. I guess the problem I have with it on twofold. One side of it is it applies because we're talking about the president, and if you got to get rid of one guy to bring in your guy, even though your guy's done the same exact fucking thing first guy did that got fired for it, that's where I have a problem. Same with half the country, all the Republican people that vote for or whoever vote Trump. I mean, they all sit there. I think just about everybody can kind of sniff this and go, man, that Biden guy is pretty dirty.
Isn't that? I mean, I think in terms of dirty, the one thing that we know, one thing I think maybe we can agree on rather, that is true of Hunter Biden at least, is that he sounds like an entitled rich kid. Not some big winner, doesn't have a lot of genuine credentials, has the position because of his name. I grew up around DC. I grew up around the children of lots of like ambassadors and the kids of CEOs and stuff like that. I went to school with, such and such the third kind of people. Okay. Like literally. And they probably still ain't shit as human beings. Right. If I'm being completely honest, but they are trading on the family name. This is a common practice amongst rich people in general, amongst DC elites, whatever you want to call them. I got no love for Hunter Biden. Okay, none. Just as like I really don't like Joe Biden as a candidate or all that much as the idea of as a president. If you probably would have shunned me, and you're probably one of the people I would still be on my list if I ever snapped. But just know that, Drew. Anyway, so he's no great shakes. Now I don't want to deny that. Again, we agree on the guy who ran Burisma, name escapes me currently.
Zlochevsky.
That guy, Schlotsky's. This guy, this guy seems like a really corrupt guy.
Oh, he's super corrupt.
But with regards to Joe Biden in particular, acting on essentially orders from the administration in concurrence with effectively, the EU and the is it the IMF? I can't remember, the International Monetary Fund, with all these people in conjunction to say this guy is not pursuing cases, not just against Burisma, but against a bunch of companies. He's sitting on his hands. Drew, you're not helping. You're just not helping, Drew. But a bunch of companies. Let's get him out, and because it was Joe Biden that made the hard sell of I'm withholding aid from your country until you do this thing. Then suddenly it becomes all about him protecting his son and the Burisma company versus all of the things that were going on in Ukraine, or rather not going on in Ukraine because of the prosecutor at that time, who was supposed to be investigating a case that started before Hunter Biden ever joined the board at Burisma. It seems
everything
like a phenomenal stretch, right?
And that case was going incredibly well until until Joe Biden and Hunter Biden got involved in the Ukraine.
But see, I guess that's where we start to separate on what is a fact. Like,
okay,
what is phenomenally well mean?
Look this up, okay. They freeze Zlochevsky's assets in London, and the assets they seized, they were able to seize it because it was pretty much embezzled aid that was given to them by America in the joint efforts under Obama.
How do we know that?
This comes from Reuters and like political articles I've dug up in New York Times. This is old stuff. This
I'll take
is
a look
back
at
in
Reuters, man. I would.
This is 2014. And I'll take a look at anything. I'm pulling from numerous sources that my liberal friends show me. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm in different batches of liberal friends too. Yeah. So look,
I don't even know what that word means anymore. But go ahead.
There's good evidence on this for real. It's a joint effort investigation. America is participating, but England and France and Germany, all of them are in it. They get Zlochevsky. Now, they don't get him. He flees. They don't get him personally, but they get his assets and bank account, all the stuff.
He does go into exile in Russia, right?
Yes. Okay, this is 2014. Mm-hmm. Well, to show you how big of a deal this case coming together was, they threw a fucking banquet. And Bill Taylor's there, and it's a gala, and it's all in celebration of this. They got him, and it's going to court, and he's gonna either have to come in or lose a bunch of stuff, take a big hit. Mm-hmm. Literally 2 weeks later, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer are hired on, and then everything goes to shit right away. Like within 2 weeks. Is it
because they got hired to the
yes,
board?
They
how do you know that? How do you know that?
Because there's so much more small details I don't have on my whiteboard, but I can go back and pull them. And these are going to be, it's a freedom of information stuff. So a lot of this stuff is coming out. It's direct phone calls and transcripts of phone calls between Devin Archer. And it starts off with Devin Archer making phone calls to John Kerry, not to John Kerry directly, but to people right under him in his office. But then as it progresses, all of a sudden you're seeing them get an actual meeting with Kerry. And then,
Okay. I still question why we're going down this rabbit hole.
Okay, I'll tie that in real fast.
Because I want to give him his due, right, first of all.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but we're 2 hours plus in.
Because David just asked a question just a second ago, why Trump was potentially even stalling this aid, if not for a bad personal reason on his part. And I'm telling you, the other side's answer is it all goes back to all this big pile of corruption. And Trump has justified reasons to say he's delaying the aid. The last batch of aid was directly siphoned off by an oligarch who was inside the Ukrainian government. And our whole damn joint efforts went after him. That's Zlochevsky.
So, okay, if all of that is true, why is to date Trump never given a justification for the hold on the aid?
Because you're not going to like this answer.
Because he doesn't have to have people agree with him with his justification. He has to provide a justification. He has
He
not.
has given it. The people like CNN, New York Times, and Politico are going to do everything they can not to run that. Then run the exact opposite narrative.
According to
but
what is
what's
it,
the narrative?
Office that
No,
is
I mean,
basically
what is the narrative?
Hang on a second. According to the office, in which the name of it in particular escapes me, the particular department, according to them, the people who were in charge of releasing the aid to date, they are saying we were never given a reason as to why the aid is being withheld, only that it is to be withheld. To date, that is still true.
Some of those people, the other people in those same departments, don't agree with that. And that's why I wish this all does go to trial, so you can get Bolton and Mulvaney, but then also there's going to be three others right beside them that are going to say something opposite.
There's not going to be any witnesses, though. They're not going to call any witnesses. Don't you think that's weird?
They are going to call witnesses. They're going to call Adam Schiff because he's got aides in his department directly tied to Burisma. That just came out. And then you're going to call Hunter Biden, you're going to call Joe Biden, and you're going to call a fucking whistleblower. And they're going to blow all this shit up as a planned out bullshit plan by the Democrats.
I wish they would.
No. Wait a minute.
I'm lost at this point.
No one's going to call anyone. Okay? The Senate has rules on this.
Thank you, William.
The Senate's rules were passed in 1986 and for the most part weren't heavily revised since 1868. So they're not necessarily great rules, to be honest. But the Supreme Court Justice, Roberts is going to preside over the Senate trial. And he's going to have almost full control over every evidentiary question that comes up. So he can be overruled by a simple majority of Senate votes. But whether or not someone is a witness or can be called as a witness is simply the call of the presiding officer, which is John Roberts. I mean, I don't see him saying that people who had direct evidence, like Mick Mulvaney, are not legitimate witnesses on this impeachment trial. I imagine he'll allow them.
Dead air. Chris, thoughts? William, thoughts? I know you had posted something there a second ago.
Oh no, it's an interesting conversation for sure. I mean, it's going to be kind of hard. I mean, I found the one article I sent to you guys, and this one person on NPR was interviewed about why he withheld aid to Ukraine, and basically he was saying that the response would be that he was worried about corruption in the Ukrainian government. So it's kind of hard to prove that, like, hey, what was really going on there? You wanted them to do something to help you out politically, but that's kind of hard to really conclusively prove. It kind of gives him like a face-saving explanation. So at any rate, I mean, my take on this whole thing is that people can use whatever centers they want to use because it's an arbitrary standard. High crimes and misdemeanors means different things to different people. So I can understand why somebody would see it, that he should be impeached, and I can also understand the other side of the argument where people would think this doesn't reach that level. I don't think it's gonna do much to hurt him. I mean, I think what's going to happen is it's going to get killed in the Senate pretty quickly, and it's not going to make much political difference in next year's election.
That part I can agree with. It probably will get killed quickly in the Senate.
Yeah.
What impact that has on the election, to my mind, is still a total toss-up. What the outcome of the election is going to be next year is still a total toss-up. But as to whether or not an argument can be made that he withheld aid because he was concerned about corruption is one thing, but officially, no justification was given for withholding the aid. According to the office, which the name of which escapes me, according to the office which was supposed to release the aid, they're saying we were never told a reason. We just know the aid was withheld. That by itself is suspicious because, as I understand in some legal obscura, a justification is supposed to be made at the time it's being withheld. Whether or not it's pretextual, whether or not it's legitimate, whether or not anything, there's supposed to be a reason offered at the time the aid is being withheld for the aid being withheld. That wasn't true then. It's still not true now. We can make arguments back and forth as to why he might have, and he can say why he might have, but according to the office, that they were never proffered a justification. That is, to my understanding, what is legally problematic about the way the aid has been withheld, which is just a way of saying that if Trump is a criminal, he's a stupid criminal.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, RJ. Thank you for the. I've been anointed by a barrister on that one. That's good. Shut up, Drew. All right.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're gonna do stupid shit, maybe don't do it in the face of a recording, all of your ambassadors. But I mean, God.
Defense attorney I once knew told me that if you're going to break the law, don't break two laws. And this is sort of like that in the sense that, don't do something stupid and then compound it by doing something even more stupid in the same act. And that's sort of where we are.
That is incredible. Like,
yeah, but this same stupid man got himself elected over Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, barely, and lost the popular vote. But the point that I think Drew was getting at is that if you're going to make a mistake, like, don't make it twice.
Don't make it twice, and don't make it in such a way that'll make the first mistake worse.
Right.
Yeah. The other problem, too, is you've got the president and a lot of the Ukrainians sitting there saying, there was no pressure. This has been blown out of proportion. It's not like this. And then a lot of your testimony swings on Sondland, who directly says the aid was not tied. It was the meeting, and the phone call. And then he's a sketchy one himself. His story's changed, and he's feeling the pressure hardcore right now.
True.
Cue David.
Yeah, at this point, I feel like we need to wrap because we've been at this for 2+ hours. We've been down some rabbit trails. We're making projections, hopefully, at this point about the over/under, I think, which is a question mark. Some people think that there was a short-term probably bump to the Trump polling versus whatever prospective nominee. But it's temporary, these things. And I think, as RJ said, sort of at the top of this thing is mostly opinions at this point of anybody who's really engaged. They're baked in. We already think about this, what we think about it, all of us. And that is maybe not ideal because a lot of us are wrong, either on one side or the other. And I don't really know a way to solve that. But either way, either tomorrow or Thursday, if not tomorrow, we're going to have a vote for impeachment that will probably pass in the House and will die quickly in the Senate. And what happens after that is going to be for the history books. That's Drew. I agree with that. Everyone who doesn't agree with me is objectively wrong. That's a very mild statement. My hat is not objectively wrong, Drew. your attempt at a goatee is objectively wrong. How about that? But anyway, I think we should close here. I thank everybody for coming out and participating. It's true, Drew. You don't have a goatee. I said attempt. Anyway, okay, stop. Either speak or just stop typing, because nobody can see that. Nobody can see that. I feel like I'm arguing with myself like an insane person. Anyway, I'm going to ignore future comments from Drew, who is our meme minister, who made no memes for me this week.
False.
RJ made some fantastic memes about, what was that guy's name, Covington or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah, who got his jaw broke after saying a bunch of like racist stuff, and like he got what was coming to him. And that's a whole separate conversation. Do what? Oh, now he talks. Okay.
I certainly did a fermenting opinions meme for you.
For what?
Oh, that's true. He did.
You ignored it.
It's Tuesday. What'd you put out since Sunday?
Well, he did.
I did.
I saw it.
Okay, well, I guess maybe I missed it. I don't know, or maybe I saw it and I forgot. Maybe it was
Dead to me. I put like 5 minutes into that, David.
Oh, yeah. No, you were just trolling me on
5 minutes
on Christmas photos with my girlfriend. Yeah, you did that. Is that what you're calling the memeing? That was Drew trolls me mercilessly, and I love him for it. But anyway.
Here's I got a dumbass Republican award for the week. Goes to Matt Gaetz for calling out Hunter Biden for a crack problem while he's had like 5 or 6 DUIs.
Yeah.
Classic.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that is also an appeal to hypocrisy, right? Yes, Matt Gaetz has no clout when calling out other people on substance abuse. That's true, but like, and I don't want to defend Matt Gaetz, but like, just because Matt Gaetz has a substance abuse issue doesn't mean that Hunter Biden doesn't, right? Or that's not worthy of some attention.
Totally.
That's how whataboutism works.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
There.
No, absolutely.
But Matt Gaetz of all people, it hurts me.
We need to also recognize here, like, fuck Matt Gaetz. God, he's such an asshole.
He's a terrible human being. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not. But
right.
like
just on its own,
he's a hypocrite for doing it. Doesn't make him wrong. Drew, I'm not drunk. I'm really not even drunk. I've just been at this for 2+ hours. That's kind of the same thing. But anyway, yes, I am trying to wrap up now. You're
cool.
right. Matt Gaetz is terrible. It is hypocritical. Doesn't necessarily make him wrong on that point. He just doesn't have any juice when he says it, like evangelicals. But stop. I'm not paying attention to Drew anymore. I want to say thank you to our digital wizard, Ross Janes at janesmedia.com, for helping making sure this actually runs tonight, because it almost didn't. So thank you particularly to Ross. Drew can go to hell. Thank you all for coming out and having a civil conversation, which I know things get heated, especially on Facebook. So I really appreciate the somewhat bitter tone, even though we maybe still don't agree on what happened here or what the outcome is going to be. But to Chris, not Drew, RJ, and William, thank you guys for coming out. I'm David Poseidon, your host at Fermenting Opinions. Please check us out at fermentingopinions.com. We are on Facebook and I think Twitter now, and check us out on Beyond Pod, iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasting on. Also the YouTube channel where this is going to be streaming to, and shared around on Facebook and all that good stuff. Check us out there. If anyone's been paying attention to this, thank you for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.